Most people think patience is about endurance, about gritting your teeth and bearing it. But I've learned something different over the years. Real patience. It's not about suffering in silence. It's actually the opposite. I used to be one of those people who would say yes when I meant no, who would smile while burning inside. And I thought I was being patient, noble even. Until one day I realized I wasn't patient. I was just scared. 7 years ago, when my wife and I first got married, we treated each other like competitors rather than partners. We argued 3 times a day, every single day. I remember the frustration, the way small things would pile up. She wanted to know where I was going, what I was doing. I felt controlled, she felt ignored, and we both felt misunderstood. But here's what I see everywhere now. This same pattern, just wearing different masks. I see people who are respected everywhere they go, but the moment they step through their front door, they become small. They call it keeping the peace, but really, they're afraid. They've learned to avoid conflict by avoiding confrontation entirely. And I see people who endure, sometimes wives, sometimes husbands, who stay because they feel trapped, who've been told that sacrifice is love, when sometimes it's just fear wearing a noble mask. Let me be clear. If you're in a situation where you feel unsafe, emotionally or physically, that's not about patience. That's about survival. And seeking help is not weakness, it's wisdom. What I'm talking about today is different. And I'm talking about the everyday friction in relationships where both people are fundamentally safe, but caught in patterns that create unnecessary suffering. In these cases, there's this quiet accumulation of resentment, like pressure building in a closed container. And we tell ourselves we're being patient, when really, we're just postponing an inevitable explosion. The turning point came when I started studying psychology, and then later, when I discovered meditation practices, not as an escape, but as a tool to understand what was actually happening inside me. And here's what I realized. There are 2 completely different types of patience. The first type, the one most of us practice, is suppression. It's when you swallow your words, clench your jaw, and let resentment build. You're not dealing with the problem, and you're just pushing it down. And psychology tells us clearly, what we suppress doesn't disappear, it transforms into anxiety, into illness, into sudden explosions that destroy relationships. But there's a second type of patience, the kind that comes from inner strength rather than fear. This patience doesn't require you to suppress anything. Instead, it gives you the space to observe your emotions, understand them, and respond with clarity rather than react from pain. Think about it like this. When a child is upset because you won't give them candy, they feel genuine frustration. That's natural. But as adults, we can observe that frustration, acknowledge it, and still make the right choice. Not by forcing ourselves to feel nothing, but by understanding our feelings without being controlled by them. That's the difference. And one is endurance, the other is mastery. So how do we cultivate this second type of patience? Let me share 3 practical insights. First, understand that our education system teaches us how to make a living, but not how to manage our inner world. We spend years learning mathematics and literature, but 0 hours learning how to observe our own minds. This is a skill we must teach ourselves. Second, when conflict arises, whether with your partner, your colleague, a family member, you have 3 options. Most people know only 2, lash out or suppress. But there's a third option. Pause and observe. Ask yourself, what's really happening here? Am I reacting to what's happening now, or to something from my past? Am I seeing this person clearly, or am I seeing my own fears reflected back at me? There's an old saying, when one person is angry, the other should reduce their words. It's wise, but not because you should live in fear or submit. It's wise because fire plus fire creates destruction. But calm presence can cool things down. This applies to anyone, regardless of gender or role. Whoever has more clarity in the moment has the responsibility and the power to de-escalate. This isn't about one person always yielding. It's about both people learning to recognize when they have clarity and when they don't. And third, this is crucial. Real patience has boundaries. It says, I won't react with anger, but I also won't accept disrespect. Patience without boundaries isn't patience, it's self-abandonment. What I've discovered is that patience, practiced correctly, becomes something beautiful. It's not a burden, it's a form of strength. When you can remain calm while others are losing their composure, you're not weak. You're demonstrating a form of power that most people never develop. You're showing that you're not controlled by circumstances or by other people's emotions. And here's the paradox. When you stop suppressing and start truly observing, the need for patience actually decreases. Those arguments I had with my wife, they didn't disappear because we learned to suppress our frustrations. They disappeared because we learned to understand ourselves and each other better. Now, 21 years later, we might disagree once every few months, not because we're avoiding conflict, but because we've removed the conditions that create it. The people around us sense this too, and there's something magnetic about someone who has inner peace. They don't need to control others because they've learned to manage themselves. They don't need constant validation because they've found stability within. This is what real patience creates. Not resentment, but freedom. Not weakness, but strength. Not endurance, but transformation. So let me leave you with this. If you find yourself constantly enduring your life, constantly gritting your teeth through your days, pause and ask yourself, am I being patient, or am I just avoiding the real work? Because patience without self-awareness is just delayed suffering. But patience with understanding, that's transformation. The next time you feel that familiar frustration rising with your partner, your colleague, your circumstances, try something different. Don't suppress it, and don't explode. Just observe it. Watch it like you would watch clouds passing across the sky. Notice it, acknowledge it, and ask yourself, what is this teaching me about myself right now? That's where the real journey begins. Not in enduring life, but in transforming how you experience it. Take a moment today, just one moment, to observe rather than react, to understand rather than judge. Notice what shifts when you do, because real patience isn't about how much you can bear. It's about how deeply you can understand.